trust you can hear me out there. Excellent. Well, welcome to this Wednesday evening edition of whatever you want to call this, Coach's Corner. So just so you know, I'm recording, so don't say anything you wouldn't want to say in front of your mother. And here we are, ready to begin. So my topic this week is going to come back to something that I actually started writing a book on this not too long ago. And it's one of those half dozen or so books that I started that I haven't continued on, but they'll come together when I'm ready for them. Right now, my focus is somewhere else, right? As I travel this amazing country, meeting some really some great people in all the trainings that we do. We were in Houston this past weekend, and I'm still here till Friday. Then we move on to Dallas, and then we go on to Sedona, and then Palm Springs, and then who knows after that. But anyway, we had a great class this weekend, and it was an awesome time as usual. But here we are today. I want to focus on what we are focused on here today, and my whole premise of this discussion today was about purpose and passion, and how we can shift our perspective in how we're moving through our life when we really do switch into focusing on what our purpose is and what our passions are. So the first thing I talk about in this space is understanding one of the things that we're not doing, or we're not taught to do really, is how to actually wake up and own our life. Now, as a transformational coach and somebody who's been in the work and the field of therapy and so for so many years, that's oversimplifying sometimes what we're going through, because we have to deal with the past and the trauma and all the stuff that's come up. But what I'm really focused on now, and it seems like my life's work has morphed into this passion for sharing with others the power that we do have to transform our life. My practice and my teachings and the offerings that I tend to focus on have gone from being solely focused on taking care of myself, or trying to keep up with all the expectations of who I should be, or where I should be, or what I should be doing, to moving into this space and understanding that my purpose, and I believe everyone's purpose, and it should be a passion, or could be a passion if we lean into it, is to help ease the suffering of those around us. Now, there are a lot of different ways we can focus on that, but really, so one of the main things I focused on in my own transformation is moving away from the labeling that society, that our culture tends to put on us. We're identified by this sex, or this race, or this nationality, or that job, or this dysfunction, or this addiction. Even when you're diagnosed with an illness, it becomes a label, and on and on and on. And what I found in my practice and working with so many people is that there's an underlying theme that we need to check all these boxes and frame this person into this space and label them, or label ourselves as this thing or that. Or, you know what? Here's your prescription. This is what you need to do the rest of your life. Have a nice day, right? It's really interesting. And I can almost say it's like there's this tyranny of putting labels on people to try to fit them into this group or that group, right? Even in school, we're labeled as like visualized learners, or tactile learners, or auditory learners. And once we're labeled, we're told how we should feel, or how we should focus, or what we should be leaning into, or what makes us who we are. It's somebody outside of ourselves telling us who we are. And we start taking that as the truth when we hear it over and over and over again. I'm not smart enough, or I'm not fast enough, or I'm not athletic, or I'm not musical. All these messages that get planted in their head. I had a music teacher once when I was in band in school, and our teachers went on strike, and all the band students had to go in the choir room. And we were in the choir room for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, singing. I thought I had a great voice. And at the end, that choir teacher came around and said, who should stay in the choir? And she looked at me and said, stick with the band. So that label that I'm not a good singer has stuck with me my whole life, even though I do believe I have a good voice, but whatever. Anyway, we get stuck into this little box of who we are labeled as. Now, look, I'm no scholar of teaching. I tend to learn on the fly. I tend to lean into the things that I relate to, which is really what it should be all about. But I miss the point in all of the teachings, especially in the teachings we learn in school, of where is the individual celebrated when we relegate everybody to these labels, when we put everybody in these categories or identify what's wrong or right with them. And all of a sudden, we're pushing people into these groups. And I believe that all of this labeling puts us into this mindset that there's something wrong with us, that we don't fit in with that group, or we put others in that space where they feel superior to others because, look, I've been labeled as a genius, or I've been labeled as a great musician. I'm the best student in the class, or I'm the best singer. Well, you know what? Compared to who? That's what I want to know, right? Once we're labeled and we're pushed into that box, then we're told all the things we need to do to make our lives better based on that label. The 10 steps, right? How many times have I read a book about the 10 steps to a perfect relationship? I tried working those 10 steps, and you know what? I found it had nothing to do with my relationship. The 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 steps to overcoming grief. Once you go through those 20 steps, guess what? Grief isn't overcome. Grief is something that stays with you. So I'm keeping working those steps, right? Buy this thing and you'll be happy. Take this pill and you'll be healthy. The truth is, I believe that, and my message isn't about bashing the structure of society, or it's not to be a roadmap to a new way of thinking, because I am nobody you want to follow on that path. This is my path. There are valid reasons why these messages exist, and those help books have helped millions and millions of people. But what I focus on and what I want to teach is how do we grow up into our own awareness and make the decision to wake up and take ownership of our life and move out of that space of blame and shame that I carried around this chip on my shoulder for decades, blaming my stepdad, blaming this situation, or blaming this thing. I believe as a society, we should be taught to grow up. Or actually, you know what? We are taught to grow up. We're taught how to grow up. And then once we grow up, we're pushed out into society and say, okay, go make a success of yourself. But we're not really taught how to wake up and own our truth, own who we are. We all grow up and reach adulthood in many different ways. Most of it is coming from what we're taught by our teachers and by our parents and others to believe a certain thing instead of listening to what we truly believe. And through this vast array of circumstances that we encounter in our life, we reach maturity. And then eventually we're pushed out of the nest to confront the world on the terms that the world has been given to us. Sometimes we don't even see the reality of what the world is. We get pushed into, and then we get into that world and we're like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? How do I find my way through this? Through all of that, what I've found is that we're rarely taught the skills of taking ownership of our life. Somewhere along the way, we slip into this autopilot mode. We're going through life on autopilot. We've grown up, but now what? I got to wake up, do my job, be stressed, get home, pay the bills, eat, sleep, wash, rinse, repeat. All over, all over. And then you say, is this all there is? But I believe that when we begin to choose, things change. The undeniable truth is we can't always choose our circumstances, but with practice, we can take a step back and we choose how we respond or don't respond to those circumstances. We can spend a lot of time living in the past, and I did that, replaying the record over and over again. We can also spend a lot of our days worrying about this future that's not known. We can focus on all the things that are wrong in our life. And if we look, we will see them. We can look for everything that's wrong in the world, and there are a lot of things that are wrong. But you know what? These are all choices. Unfortunately, we don't see them as choices. So many times we fall into these grooves of our lives without waking up to the reality of what we focus on. What we focus on or what we practice gets bigger in our life. So what I'm focused on in this point in my life, in this point in my practice, is helping people flip the switch of their lives from autopilot to a life centered around intention. And if anybody has sat in any class that I've ever talked about, I say intention over and over and over again, because intention can lead to purpose. Living a life of purpose means we're living a life of meaning instead of living an accidental life. We're living a life of choice. But again, we can't always choose our circumstances, and life will throw us these curveballs when we find we're walking that path of truth, and suddenly somebody throws a boulder in your path and says, you know what, this isn't it, and you got to go around it. But what I found is a purposeful life is possible by practicing being present, by understanding that anything worth doing takes practice. It takes focus. It's not easy to undo all those years of programming, all those decades of going through life on autopilot. We have a tendency to focus so much of our energy on the things that don't matter. How much time have I spent worrying about things I can't change? I wish I had those times back, but I can't get them back. But now I can focus on that and say, why am I wasting my time thinking about or worrying about this thing I can't change? If I can protect myself from it, if it's going to harm me, then I protect myself from it as much as I can. And then I move on. Because despite what we see in the news, despite the messages that we get time and time and time again, at this time in our life, there are great opportunities. There are amazing things waiting to happen. We have so many reasons to learn, to connect, to discover, now more than ever before because of this interconnectedness. We can see social media and all these opportunities to connect as a burden or as a blessing. Technology itself is giving us the opportunity to connect to things that just a few years ago, we'd have to travel all the way around the world to learn. Or all the time you go on the Googles looking for something nowadays, we'd have had to buy a book, or we'd have to go pay a lot of money to learn this lesson that I can now pop on and ask Google a question. And there's the 10 steps to happiness. Thanks, Google. They're there right before us. The technological power that we have can lead us in the right direction or the wrong direction. It all depends on what we lean into. The algorithms of our social media are like the algorithms of our mind. What we lean into starts showing up over and over and over again. So the more I practice on being busy, the more I focus on being distracted, the more distracted I am. In the same way, if I go on my social media and look at this ad for this thing, all of a sudden that thing starts popping up over and over and over again. It's crazy. But as we go through this process of discovering purpose and passion, we have to understand it's a challenge. But we need to rise up and accept that it is a challenge worth fighting for. Shifting that mindset, understanding, you know what, it starts with being present. It starts with taking a pause. And it's a beautiful thing when you learn to pause and focus on your breathing. It's a beautiful thing when you take a pause and actually open your eyes and look around. And that message that said I should be worried or fearful about life, and I open my eyes and hear the birds singing and see the sky is blue, it switches everything. And the more we start doing that, the more we take that pause in the midst of all the troubles that we seem to be facing, if we have an opportunity to be present, to look around, to accept what has happened, and then decide what to do with it, it empowers us in our life. To choose to live a life of intention, it takes energy, it takes practice, but it's worth doing it. And I'm not here to tell anybody what path they should follow. This is my intention, this is my purpose. And I believe everyone's path to achieving a fulfilling life is connected through this space. Gratitude and love and kindness and forgiveness and hope and joy, all the stuff that exists here. But if we stick ourselves in the mind all the time, we get lost. I can't tell you or anyone what the path should be, but I can say this. If you don't live a life of intention and purpose, you're selling life short, because life has so many beautiful challenges ahead. So much of what I share on my journey, and I love sharing my journey, comes from my own experience of flipping that switch and transforming my life, but also the switch that I help clients flip, the students that I've worked with over the years. The one thing I can tell you is I would never tell somebody I work with to sit back and just go with the flow. We would never just throw up our hands and say, it is what it is. No, we say it is what it is, and what am I going to do with it? We don't just shrug our shoulders. We don't just let life unfold on its own, because that's a bad idea, because all of a sudden we fall down that path of wash, rinse, repeat again. Living a life filled with expectation is a really bad idea, because expectations lead us to suffering. We have this expectation of where our life should be, and when it's not there, we suffer. We expect things to go a certain way, and when they aren't, we get angry or sad or frustrated. We suffer. So as we move forward, we have to learn to let go of the expectations. So there's nothing wrong with having hopes and dreams and, expecting things to be a certain way. But if our life depends on that, if the way we move our life is depending on those expectations, we're just going to be disappointed over and over and over again. But from a mindful perspective, we can take a step back and say, you know what? I have the power to transform my life right now. To come to a place of understanding, we have to first gain some insight on where we are, and understanding that our minds have an amazing ability to skew things to fit our narrative. We can look at ourselves in the mirror and only see what's on the surface, even if that's not real, because we have this skewed perspective of what we should look like, right? Actually, you know what? When we look in a mirror, what we see is backwards. We're not even seeing the true reflection of ourselves. When we start to truly reflect beyond the surface, then we can start paying attention to what makes us happy here. It starts by coming to a place of pause, by reflecting on what the opportunities are around us, to understand that skewed perception of our reality oftentimes leads us to make choices based on what we think will bring us happiness, or what we're told will bring us happiness, instead of paying attention to the actual things that make us happy. I could be in the midst of a very happy, joy-filled day, and I read this thing about this is going to make you happy. Then all of a sudden I start paying attention to that because, wow, I want that. Despite the fact I'm already happy. I want that person to tell me what's going to make me happier. Crazy. But when we sit back and we reflect on our true, authentic selves, when we sit back and start discovering what's going on deep inside, in so many different ways, we can define these as tapping into our sacral chakra, or slowing down that overactive mind to tap into the creative parts of ourselves. We can start to awaken a creative energy within ourselves when we start asking questions like, why? Why? Why am I choosing to do this thing? Why do I think I need to buy this new car to be happy? Why do I need to have or work a 60, 70-hour week in a job I don't even really like? If I get back and ask why, then I can start maybe finding a different path. When we start asking why, we become curious about our life. And that's what mindfulness helps us do. We can become better at discerning the things we're wasting our time on and the things that are actually moving us forward. When we create that space to realign with the power of choice that we have every single moment of our life, we can start to discover our true self. We can start exploring what really brings us happiness. And that lack of understanding of our truth allows us to be manipulated into thinking that we want something that we don't have. And until we get this thing or that thing, we believe we'll never be happy. We start falling into line with our false self and not our true self. And that false self pushes us into that place of meaningless goals and even self-sabotaging behavior. And trust me, I've been there. I start reaching this place of success, and then all of a sudden I thought, why am I doing this? I'm not worthy or I'm a imposter or a fraud, and then I do something to sabotage my behavior. That was my old autopilot self. There are so many things in our life that we can lean into that we care about, but instead we're leaning into and caring about the things that aren't part of our life, stuck in that headspace of needing more instead of sinking into this heart space and seeing what we have, seeing what we care about, our partners, our mom, our friends, our pets, our relationships, all these things that warm our heart, the help and health and happiness of those around us, the easing of suffering of the world around us. It's what Stephen Covey calls the circle of concern. We have this circle in our life, and in that circle are so many of the things that we've chosen to concern us, and many of the things that just naturally concern us. And in that circle are so many things that we can control and so many things that we cannot control. And when we start to understand what concerns us, we can start to recognize the things that we can't control. Because if we don't recognize this lack of control, we spend a lot of time worrying about the things we can't control, putting too much energy into the concerns that are beyond our control. We could spend so much time worrying about what happens to this person that I love when they get on a plane and fly across the world. There are so many things that could go wrong. How much time did I spend there waiting and worrying about that when I should have just said, you know what, I love you. Pick up the phone and say, how are you? I'm thinking about you right now. I could have leaned into that. The focus on the things that are beyond our control really sap our energy and our power and our time. And you know what else it does? As we're spending all this time focusing on the things that should be making us happy, we're wasting our time on the things that we can't control that are taking us away from our happiness. When we bring this into reality and bring this into our awareness, we can see all these opportunities that start to show up over and over and over again. When we lean into that truth, we can start to see that so many things that are beyond our control, we shouldn't be worrying about. Wake up and own it. Why am I burning this energy? In the power of transformation, we can turn our mind to the things that we do have influence over and start to discover that we all have this deep wisdom, this creativity, this power. So it starts by focusing on what's going on here. What brings me joy? What warms my heart? What things I should be leaning into? It starts by taking this approach that we should understand that transformation occurs from the inside out. That a life of truth and purpose and meaning has little to do with how we look, has little to do with how much money we have or how many friends we have on our social media. It's about our truth and our purpose. You know what it's more about? It's about owning our truth and putting out our truth. Because when we start to do that, the people that resonate with our message are attracted to it. And the people who aren't are kind of repulsed by it. And suddenly we're surrounded by those who we connect with instead of those we disconnect with. Suddenly we start to see that we're resonating with a certain tribe of people. And all of a sudden things shift. All of a sudden we start to see the truth that I have a purpose and a passion in my life. In that space, we have to move into this space of, again, taking ownership of our life, taking ownership of our world with the understanding I can't control the whole world, but I can have some control over my world. And this allows us to build this foundation on which we can move to transform our life. Because if we don't accept where we are, if we don't accept the things we can change and the things that we can't change, how do we start to build our life with purpose and passion? Acceptance. It starts with acceptance. And it's harder than it sounds because acceptance can mean so many things at different times to different people. It begins by defining what acceptance means, accepting the reality of things. And in our practice, acceptance doesn't mean we're approving of it. We're not even saying it's okay. It means we're going to stop fighting the reality of life. And one of my favorite phrases to say when I see something that I can't change, or see somebody that might disagree with me, or even in some way want to cause harm to me, I always use the phrase in my mind, I see you. When I'm listening to somebody I disagree with, I say to myself, I see you. And from there, I can determine what I'm going to do with this seeing. If I see something that I feel is threatening, then I'm going to do all that I can to protect myself and the people that I love from what you believe or do. If it's something I disagree with, then I'm going to take that information and determine what, if anything, I'm going to do with it. Because if I can't change your mind, and I know I can't, then why fight it? But why see that person as somebody I should hate? Because I don't know what made them believe they do the things they do. One of my favorite things to do, I don't know, favorite's not the right word, but when I'm driving in traffic, we all know that whenever we go out in our vehicles, there's going to be somebody who drives like an idiot, right? It always happens. And the reason this is such a powerful practice is that when somebody cuts me off in traffic, I used to be that person that would just honk the horn and flip the bird and just freak out. And then I get all tense and stressed. But now I say, I see you. I see you. Have a nice day. What a shift that is. Because instead of using that practice of getting angry or frustrated, and we're allowing that idiot to control my emotion, I say, I see you. And I let them go on in their day. It's a shift in the perspective. It's a shift in how we move through our life. So just think about how much time we wasted on these things that happen over and over and over in our life. How many hours we've spent wishing things were different, wishing my parents did this different, wishing I made a different choice when I decided to study my first time I went to school, wishing I didn't make that stupid mistake I made when I was 19. But you know what? There's no way to turn back the time. So to truly learn, we have to accept it. To truly grow from it, we have to accept it. The good, the bad, the in between. And that doesn't mean it was okay, but I accept the reality of it. I see you. I see that mistake I made. I see that thing that didn't go my way. I see that person who hurt me. And that allows me to come into the present and decide what I'm going to do with that information right now. We can take so many lessons from this place of acceptance that it's such a great, amazing place to start. That when we start teaching mindfulness, we move from the place of presence to awareness to acceptance, because acceptance is the foundation from which we look forward. So when we ask ourselves, are we going through life on autopilot, or am I living a life of intention? Some of the simple questions we can ask ourselves is, am I dreading the day ahead? Am I waking up on Monday wishing it was Friday? Because if there's nothing I'm looking forward to, then I'm not living a life of intention. If we don't feel excited or inspired by a new day, then how are we going to be in the space of discovery? If we go through our day and each and every day is predictable, then we're living a life of autopilot, because you know what? Life is unpredictable. If we're truly present, then we start discovering today is different than yesterday. Now, there might be some similar routine to yesterday, but you know what? Something's different today. If we find ourselves, we get caught doing things without thinking about them, then we're just going through life on autopilot. If we can't seem to really focus and have difficulty remembering, how many times was I driving down the road and all of a sudden I looked back and said, was that light red when I went through it? I hope not. Or we get stuck holding on to things that have nothing to do with the present. We get stuck in this space and we're going through our life on autopilot. We should examine our why. And to start leading a life of intention, we need to start with this question as often as we can. Why? Why am I picking up my phone first thing in the morning and starting to scroll through my messages or reading my emails? Why? Why did I not pause and think about all the things I'm grateful for as I open my eyes this morning? I often talk a lot about it in our course on mindfulness, but also sometimes in the course on soundness, how we should reawaken this childlike curiosity that we all had as kids before it was shut down. That childlike curiosity that wondered why the grass was green and the sky was blue and the food tasted this way and the dog had to wag its tail. All those questions that came up until somebody told us to stop asking so many questions, right? And we got shut down. But we should really reawaken these questions. I mean, some of these questions are not easy, but why am I not asking why my friends are my friends? Or why did I buy that thing that showed up on my social media feed that I didn't need? Or why am I reaching for that drink or that bowl of ice cream or that slice of cake or whatever it is? Or why am I stuck in a job that I don't like? Why am I working late today? Why am I angry at this person who, for the 20th time, came in and pushed my buttons and made me react a certain way? These questions that we should ask ourselves should come back into the space. Does that even make sense? Does it make sense that at the Thanksgiving table, this person who's part of my family, who always knows how to pick on me and always talks about politics, why am I getting irritated for this person after decades and decades and decades of hearing the same thing? See them as they are and say, you know what? Stay away from me, or I'm tuning you out. When we start living a life more intentional, we have to be the explorer of our lives. We have to come to this place of taking stock, of doing an inventory, and not denying the reality of it, and starting to examine the choices that we've made. And if we're not happy with what we see, then you know what? We need to accept that we're not happy. But we should also accept the fact that I have the ability to change that. If I'm not happy right now, I can change that. It might take a little work. But until we accept the reality of who, what, when, and where we are, how are we going to ever change? And it's not about having it all figured out, because trust me, I surely don't have it all figured out. But I have accepted the reality of where I am. Living a life of purpose isn't about having it figured out, but it does come into the truth that there is purpose behind the action that I'm taking today. We could ask a question like, let's just say, okay, somebody came in to take my sound healing class because they want to be the greatest sound healer on the planet before I'm 50, right? Or this person could say, I'm taking this sound healing class because I feel inspired by helping easing the suffering of others, and I hope to be able to get there someday. And when we look at both of those answers, because I want to be the greatest sound healer before I'm 50, or because I want to help ease the suffering of others, we can see that that first person probably has this goal in mind, and the second person is trying to decide what they want to have for dinner. They just want to do something that inspires them. They're both intentions, but are they right intentions? Are they ego-based or heart-based? And I say the two questions are more goals than intention, but one of them sounds a little bit more heartfelt than the other. But they're both coming to this place of wanting to be better. So living a life that's more purposeful and intentional isn't about, though, finding that final destination. To be the greatest is really looking at that final destination. But what if we are intentional about not even having to know the destination? I want to do the work to get there. We don't have to have it all figured out. To be a practitioner, we start practicing. In sound healing, in our level 1 sound healing class, we say, you know what, we've been sitting here for 2 days talking about sound healing. Is that going to make you the greatest sound healer of all time? I don't know. But if you start practicing, it might get there. And who gets to define what the greatest of all time is anyway? We don't have to have it all figured out, but we should always ask, what am I doing today that's going to get me where I want to be tomorrow? That's the important question. Tomorrow, not 10 years from now, just one day at a time, making an intentional choice today. Now, of course, we have to have goals in our life. We have to plan out our year, or plan out our week, or plan out our destination. But once we set that goal, we come back into the moment and say, here I am today. And what am I doing today that's going to get me where I want to be tomorrow? Because I know as I move forward on that path, if I made a 12-month plan, by the time I get to December, if I started in January, that plan's going to change because life changes. And when we get into this space of waking up today and say, what am I doing today that's going to get me where I want to be tomorrow? We're making a choice to experiment with our lives, to understand that it might be messy and it might be scary, but that's what's going to move me forward. Being intentional is going to help me focus and lean into the direction of my dreams instead of my goals. But nothing changes unless we first accept where we are. Nothing changes once we accept where we are, we find the courage to take that first step towards tomorrow. And once we start finding that footing with intention, we find ourselves heading in the direction of our true path. Not our final destination, because that path is going to be changing, but the path we should be walking today. And it all starts by being present, by exploring what makes us happy, what brings us joy, what makes me tick. That's what the practice is all about. So that's kind of the message that I have to say, but I want to finish this session with a perspective-focused meditation to shift the perspective, perhaps, or just take you on a beautiful journey, whatever you think is right. So, as we're here, I just want you to listen and tune in, and wherever you are and whatever you're doing, just take a pause. And however you sit in meditation, just go into that meditative space and turn to your breath for a moment. And just listen to your breath as it flows. Make yourself comfortable. And just feel that gentle rhythm of your breath. And for just a moment, try to do nothing. Just be content with how your body's breathing. And then begin paying attention to how your whole body feels. From the top of your head to the tips of your toes. Think of your whole body as one, sitting there or resting there. Think about how it feels. And recognize right now, every nerve, every muscle, every fiber is right there with you. And don't try to change anything. Don't want to stop anything from changing. And recognize that with every breath you take, with every beat of your heart, some things can change on their own. And we can change some things just by paying attention to them. So just be content for the next few moments to notice whatever you notice and feel whatever you feel, as if you're a passive, detached observer as your breath flows and your body sits. Perhaps you can begin to get a sense and turn your attention deeper within, becoming more and more aware of how you feel. The position of your body. Begin to notice the places you might be holding some tension. Think about how you might look right now. Think about how the expression on your face might be. And I wonder if you could begin to get a sense of how your body, how you look from the outside. I wonder if you can imagine that you're taking a step back and you're looking at yourself. And it really doesn't matter if you can vividly picture yourself or not. Just picture yourself. It's just an intention. It's just an idea that matters. Don't try to get it perfect. Think about your body posture. Think about your clothing. Think about how your eyes look as they're resting there. And keep looking at that image of yourself. And imagine as you do, just imagine Your own feet are gently lifting away from the ground. Imagine you start to feel yourself floating serenely upward, just lifting a bit, slowly rising. All the while, you keep your gaze on your own body, seated below you, your physical body, right there where it is, as you rise up above it. Imagine you keep rising higher and higher. Imagine you rise up and the ceiling and the roof disappear, allowing you to float freely above, gazing down to see yourself seated comfortably below, in the building, looking content and contemplative. Imagine as you look down, you can see the rooms around you, the people around you, but you continue to float higher and higher, and your perspective widens more and more until you can see the neighborhood around you, the buildings. You can even see the people in the buildings, the cars on the street, and the roads. Imagine you can see the people going about their busyness, cooking dinner and taking a dog out for a walk, riding their bikes. And as you go higher and higher, you see more and more cars and buses bustling. Imagine you're high above the city that you live in, and you can see all the network of human lives going this way and that, influencing each other, encountering each other in different ways, or just walking past. And all the while, you float higher and higher until the people become like little tiny ants below. Maybe you start to rise into the clouds and you see the whole world surrounding beneath you. The town, the countryside. Eventually you see the coastline as your perspective becomes more and more expansive. You're flying high above the clouds now, high above the weather, up through the atmosphere, so high that you eventually rise above the sphere of the planet itself, and you can see the curve of it. Imagine you drift further and further away until you're floating in space, feeling safe and comfortable, but looking back at the earth below, as if it's suspended in space before you. And you can notice the turning of the earth. Imagine looking at the earth from outer space in all of its majesty and glory, seeing all the colors, all the light, the great blue oceans, the brown and green of the land, the white at the top and the bottom of the world, and the snow caps. All across the world, you see wisps of clouds passing silently across the earth. And though you can no longer see yourself from far above, you know that you're there, that your feet are planted on the ground. And as you look at the earth from this perspective, you still get a sense and a feeling of being present right there on the earth. You change your perspective. But from this perspective, you know that you're part of that. Imagine as you look back at the earth, you contemplate all the different lives there, the people you know, the people you someday will know, and all the people you'll never meet. The population of the planet includes billions and billions of people. And you realize that your life is one among so many. Just one among the total population of the earth. As you think about all the people on the earth, you can think of the rich diversity of life. All the different languages, all the different cultures, all the different ages. Imagine as you look back at the earth, you realize there are babies just being born. There are people just passing on. And there are people in the prime of their life. And you realize the enormous variety of human experiences. That some people right now are suffering, and some people are joy-filled. And as you gaze back at the earth, you're aware of its position amongst all the other planets. Imagine you drift further and further away, and you realize that the earth is like a tiny speck of stardust. The world of ours is a single planet, a tiny grain of sand, a tiny rock in space. And the sun itself is just one of billions of stars. As you look back at the earth there, you realize the expanse of the human experience. All these different moments, the history of the earth, the future. How many billions of years is that earth? As you contemplate the vast lifespan of the earth and the vast lifespan of the universe, you remember that the present moment is just a blink of an eye, a fleeting second in the river of cosmic time. But as you reflect on that, you have to remember that the here and now is important, because you're standing at the center point of all of human experience. Here and now, you find yourself at the center of your life. And though your body may be small in the grand scheme of things, your imagination is as big as the universe. Your energy is part of the universe. From the cosmic point of view, your body might seem small, but your mind, your spirit, is as vast as the universe itself. And you can contemplate things from the past and the present and the future. And when you bring it all together, perhaps you can see your life within the bigger picture. That within the total context of time, you're an integral part of something bigger, something truly vast, that you are part of the all itself. Just as every cell in your body works together to form a greater unity, a living being, your body as a whole is like a cell in the organism of the universe. And every atom in the universe is necessary to the grand design. As your consciousness expands and your mind stretches out to reach and touch the vastness of eternity, it changes the perspective. Perhaps you can realize that you have a reason, that there is a purpose, that you are part of all of that. Life is what you make of it. As you put things in perspective and you focus on your true values and your priorities, one day at a time, you can begin to develop a serenity to accept the things you can't change. Then you start to find the courage to change the things that you can. And you realize that deep within, there's a wisdom to see the difference. That you are a truth-seeking human being, and that you are part of the universe as a whole. That there's a place and a purpose, and that amongst all the other stars in the universe, there is only one you, only one being who knows all the things you know, who's been to all the places you've been, who's learned the lessons and made the mistakes and done all the things you have. There's only one light that lights like you. And the universe has one message for you: to let your light shine, always. And with every breath you take and every beat of your heart, you have all that you need to succeed. Now, in a moment, we're going to begin to sink back down to the earth, towards that place in the here and now. But part of you can remain to see life from a universal perspective. And remember that sense of serenity and purpose and truth, that there is something for you to share with the world around you, and that's your truth. Now just come back to your breath for a moment. Come back to how you feel, and feel that strength and serenity that comes from deep in your heart. Imagine you begin to sink down from the sky, back down to the neighborhood around you, back down into the building that you're in, back down into your body, all the way now, until you can feel your feet touching the floor. And begin to think about the room around you. Think about any action and movement. Think about the sounds. And feel how your body's breathing. And allow yourself to feel more alive. Allow yourself to feel ready to take action. To feel every breath breathe that vitality into your body as a gift from the universe. And that every morning as the sun rises is an opportunity to be intentional. Now breathe a little deeper and feel the presence of this moment. A moment you've never lived before. A moment you'll never live again. Just like every day. And maybe set the intention tomorrow to wake up and ask yourself why. And what is it you're going to share with the world around you? And recognize you have all that you need to succeed with every breath and every beat of your heart. Now, ever so gently come back and feel how your body's breathing. Think about how you feel, and then tell yourself you're ready. And then take in a nice deep breath. Let it out nice and slow. And open your eyes. And move forward in the beautiful evening that awaits you. Thank you for joining me this evening. Do with you what you will with that message, but it was my honor to share it with you today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Peace.